I'm going to see if I can manage my desk for a week. And if I can do that, then maybe I'll go into my bedroom closet and pick another target. And I'll see if I can handle that for a week. And slowly my mindset changes to where I'm uncomfortable having a cluttered desk. So I think it's small moves. If I did everything at once, I didn't do the work to change my mindset. But if I change little things at a time, and I get the agony of it in a way, because if your life's falling apart, you feel like you need to change everything right away. And so some things we do have to have a push. But and we can do things, we can white knuckle it for a little while. But I do think if you want changes to stick and you want to be happy in your life and emotionally available to your kids and your friends and everything else, you've got to get it to where it's in the background. And the only way to do that is to make small moves and change your mindset.
ADHD Rewired, episode 338. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Rick Webster. Rick is the CEO and founder of Rena-Fi. He has spent the last 2 decades deeply involved in the ADHD community, helping people with ADHD find solutions for their own ADHD-related challenges. Rick is on a mission to help people find their path to financial freedom. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
All right. So this is really cool. We also have, right now, we got about 8 members from our coaching community who are here with us, who are listening live as we're recording this. So I'm sure they will also be contributing to this conversation in their questions. So before we dive into financial literacy, I want to kind of find out and have you share a little bit with listeners who you are. So you have ADHD yourself?
I do.
And when were you diagnosed?
I'm going to guess about 20 years ago. Like a lot of people with ADHD, I don't keep very good track of time. I know that it was quite some time ago. I'm 67 now, and as I recall, I was about 46 at the time. I actually recognized that I had ADHD when my life was falling apart, but it was falling apart so quickly, and the HMO was so slow, they were happy to get me in 3 or 4 months, but that was long enough time for everything to fall apart for me, because that's just what was going on at that point. Like a lot of people with ADHD, I've had this roller coaster kind of existence, and that was the biggest swing of all. But yeah, diagnosed probably 20, 21 years ago, somewhere in there.
And so financially, what is your background? Accountant, tell me what that is.
Yeah, I've always been in the financial world somewhere. Not always. I started out of college. I started selling boats because my cousin had a yacht brokerage. So I just fell into that. Again, like a lot of people with ADHD, we see the opportunity in front of us. We don't necessarily plan. But when that began to have difficulties I guess that was the saving the loan debacle, we go through these things once in a while. I went into real estate. And shortly after I got into real estate, I realized that I was not very good as a broker because I just couldn't negotiate between 2 people. So I started buying properties myself because that was much easier to negotiate directly with someone. So I started doing that and made a little bit of money. The next thing I know, I became a lender. I said, hey, I can help you with your project. How about if I just fund that? And we did some joint ventures. And then at that point, we started actually making direct loans to people who I wasn't working with. So I became a lender and got a pretty good education in that. Other than college, my entire education, I do take classes, but basically it's all life experience. I just, like a lot of people with ADHD, I just jump into things, and I love that steep learning curve. I'm not so good at the top of it when it's flat, and it takes really a lot of work to learn that last little bit of information. I'm not so good at that, but I guess what you'd say, a jack of all trades. I have a really wide 1-inch deep knowledge of everything. and when it comes to money, though, that is the deeper part of what I am aware of.
And do you think that you're like, where did your interest in money and financial matters sort of come from?
I think I have a hyperactive type of ADHD and I have very high energy. I actually feel blessed to have that. I know there's a lot of negative side of ADHD, but that's a positive side for me. I'm a risk taker and I kind of thrive on that. So we were buying these properties and, you have to learn, you learn this trial by fire, right? So you buy something, oh my gosh, how are we going to make these payments? The rent's only this amount. I didn't realize the expenses were that high. How am I going to solve that problem? So by solving one problem after another as we build, I think that's where a lot of that came from. And then, of course, I'm a firm believer in outside education. I don't think we can get it all ourselves. So I took a lot of classes and courses, those kind of things, not a master's program or anything like that, but just, I'd say, hey, I need to learn this thing about commercial management. I'm going to go take this course, and you write them a check and you take a course and you learn some stuff. That's really where that came from. And then I guess it evolved later when, after my meltdown, I became kind of, I had this idea that I'll never work for just a paycheck again, because it's pretty hollow it's good when you're raising a family, you need a house, you need, washers and dryers, all that kind of stuff. But when all that stuff goes away, it really kind of wakes you up to what's important. And it made me feel, I'm okay just the way I am without all that stuff. And I'm not going to go down that route again. And so I think at that point, we started looking at where we can make a difference. And one of the biggest problems I saw, and I'd already seen it in my tenants, is people don't manage their money well. And it's not that they can't add and subtract. 85% of the programs that teach about financial management, they fail to effectuate the change that they're hoping to do, because they talk about adding and subtracting, about budgeting and all these mechanical aspects, when the real problem is deeper. The real problem is, why did you buy that kayak last week? You didn't even know you wanted a kayak. Now you've got one. Why are you having trouble paying your rent now? Because you bought the kayak that you didn't even know you wanted. And so, we need to understand the emotional drivers of our behavior to have any chance of budgeting and doing all that.
So what you're saying is that financial management for so much of it is really emotional management.
If I was to pick a number, I would say 90%.
Okay.
I don't know anybody in my sphere that can't add and subtract. We learned that in 5th and 6th grade. We know how to say, okay, here's all my expenses. Here's all the money that I have income. I can make these columns. I can tweak them a little bit. And here I got a budget. I don't know anybody who can't do that. Just like I don't know anybody who can't say, you know what, if I eat 5,000 calories, I'm probably going to gain weight. People know that. But it doesn't stop them from coming home a little bit depressed or whatever and eating the entire chocolate cake in the refrigerator. It's not about the calories in, calories out, or the exercise or any of that stuff. It is about it, but underlying it is the emotional component that gets in their way.
So and sometimes it's just like there was a conversation that we were having in the chat before you logged on about like just how do you get yourself to just look at your account information? Mm-hmm. Right. So what do you recommend to people who are just like, they get so overwhelmed and avoidant of these things because it's overwhelming for them and it creates anxiety, and they're more comfortable kind of sticking their head in the sand, hoping it's going to just go away.
I think that's probably the first crux of this matter is sticking your head in the sand will not get it to go away. It makes it worse. It makes it worse because the people who you owe money to, for example, they don't like that sort of thing, right? They want you to come talk to them and say, okay, what can you do? We know you can't pay this bill, but what can you do? They want to talk to you about it. If you just stonewall them and ignore them and pretend like it doesn't exist and go buy the kayak to make yourself feel better, that's not going to work for them. And then they're going to take legal action or whatever it is, and things will get worse. And even if they don't take legal action, you got late fees. They call it the ADHD tax. You got late fees, you got bounce check fees, you got, failure to file fees with the IRS, you got uninsured traffic accidents. We've got so much stuff. People with ADHD, first of all, they start off earning 75% of what their similarly talented counterparts earn without ADHD. 75%. So if you're worth, so to speak, $10,000 a month, you're probably making $7,500. So you're starting off behind the eight ball in a way. And then we lose all this other money through the ADHD tax, the late fees and, all those different things that we do. And I would throw impulsive spending into that ADHD tax. So we've got these things in our garage that we thought we wanted and we hardly use them.
It's funny. I had when COVID started, there were some certain like food things that I wasn't able to find that are really a staple to my diet. And so, and I had not been going, and I still haven't been going to grocery stores. So I go into Amazon, and so one of the things that is a staple of my diet is a high protein oatmeal. And so I found an Amazon that's high protein oatmeal. I'm like, great. It would have been helpful if I looked at the quantity that I was ordering, because I'm pretty sure I have enough oatmeal for the rest of the year. That's another form of ADHD tax, not really looking at the fine print.
We have it was designed to be funny and to get people's attention, but we have a short series, I think it's a series of 3, that's titled "The World is Designed to Separate You from Your Money." And, and it really is in a lot of ways. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being spent to figure out what it is in your mind will get you to open up your wallet, use your credit card, and buy something. Whether you thought you needed it or not, when you woke up in the morning, you walk down any city street and you see 200 signs. And there's tremendous amount of money in marketing. And so we have to battle against that in some ways. We have to protect our boundaries so we're making our own decisions.
So let me ask you this. So, you said that, the issue is not adding and subtracting, right? But I think that there is also a lot of baggage, even just with creating budgets. So when someone is recognizing that, all right, I really this is going to be the year. I've been saying this for years. I need to have a budget. This is going to be the year that I'm going to have a budget. But the overwhelm becomes so debilitating. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend?
Well, I'm going to use the dieting analogy again. And I see the chat windows going crazy over there, but I can't really pay attention to both.
Yeah, so don't worry about the chat window. I'll filter the chat window and the questions.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to realize it's not big stuff. It's little stuff. Small moves will get you where you want to go. Let's take clutter. I just love to compare these things to other things because it takes the emotional out of it. And people say, oh, yeah, I get that. If you've got a house that's just cluttered and you've been living that way for 5 years and you could hire a housekeeper to come in and just clean that up one day, right? And you could even do it one day if you wanted to. But, if you haven't changed your lifestyle, if you haven't made those small moves, if you're still putting your purse on the dining room table instead of wherever it should go, if you're still, just dropping stuff as you walk in the door and, it becomes landscaping, you don't notice it anymore because you're just used to it. Well, it's not going to change, even if you paid someone to do it. So my thought, if I was to continue with that analogy, is that, my desk is kind of cluttered. I'm just going to clean that up today. And I'm going to see if I can maintain that for a week. I'm just going to clear it off, put things where I think they belong. If I don't have a place, I'm going to create a place. I'm going to see if I can manage my desk for a week. And if I can do that, then maybe I'll go into my bedroom closet and pick another target. And I'll see if I can handle that for a week. And slowly my mindset changes to where I'm uncomfortable having a cluttered desk. And if I'm uncomfortable with that, maybe I'm uncomfortable having a closet that's stuffed, right? And if I'm uncomfortable with those two things, maybe I can get myself to be uncomfortable with the breakfast table, which is piled up with stuff and I can never have breakfast at it because it's got stuff on it. So I think it's small moves. If I did everything at once, I didn't do the work to change my mindset. But if I change little things at a time, and I get the agony of it in a way, because if your life's falling apart, you feel like you need to change everything right away. And so some things we do have to have a push. But and we can do things, we can white knuckle it for a little while. But I do think if you want changes to stick and you want to be happy in your life and emotionally available to your kids and your friends and everything else, you've got to get it to where it's in the background. And the only way to do that is to make small moves and change your mindset.
It's interesting. I was actually talking with my own therapist about some issues around money management, and because I'm trying to sort of take over a lot of my own budgeting, both personally and in my business. And one of the things that she has suggested, and she also has ADHD, is she's like, don't even worry about tracking or managing. Just log into your accounts every day. Just do that for the next week. And I'm like, all right, I can do that for the next week. Right. And it was a small thing. And for knowing that I was going to have to report back, the next week, because I know that she would ask me if I did that. So having that accountability was a very helpful next step for it. And something that I've been working on myself is just touching the financial stuff every day. Just touching, even if my brain won't cooperate that day, at least I'm touching, I'm making an attempt at it. And if I'm sitting there for 5 or 10 minutes that I'm just like, it's like, looks like a foreign language to me. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Right. And to me, that has been a very helpful approach as I'm trying to get a better handle on my own kind of money management.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I do see a statement in your chat window there that says, I'm scared to look at my bank account. I think it's a truism. It's just that's how our brains are wired. There's a study out there that shows that when they have their retirement accounts in the stock market, when the stock market's going up, they'll check it multiple times a day. When it's going down, they don't want to check it, and they don't check it. They just, out of sight, out of mind. I'm not going to think about that, and that's when they maybe suffer a little depression or whatever. And that's when they go buy that kayak that we're talking about, because they know something's going wrong and they don't want to think about it. They need to occupy their brain with something else. It's a problem. But I totally agree with you. When I was in part of this recovery process, I did what my girlfriend coined as a pulse check. I don't know why. I just started doing it. So, every single day, I had these credit card balances every day. I'm going to look at what they are. I'm going to write them on the side of my calendar. I'm just going to say, okay, this much to B of A, this much to Chase. I'm not going to put my head in the sand. I can't solve that problem today, but I want to be aware of it. I want it top of mind, even though it causes me a little anxiety, because that anxiety, guess what? It helps me, right? Anxiety can be debilitating, but it can also be motivating. Mm-hmm. It's like pain. We don't like pain, but it keeps us from putting our hand on a hot stove.
Right. It's that sort of inverse U curve, right? Where it's like you need a bit for activation, but too much kind of shuts you down. Exactly.
And I think that is a key. And part of that is, I forgot the old proverb or whatever it was, but we got to be wise enough to know what we can change and what we can't.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
So you were mentioning a couple ways about tracking your expenses and your spending. What are some easy ways that people can track their spending?
I'm glad you asked that, because I get these kind of things stuck in my head that I just have to get out. And there's another financial guy that recommends to people with ADHD use cash. And I just bristle when I hear that. I say, that is about the worst advice you could possibly give someone who has money problems. That's just awful. Cash is not trackable. You could lose it. It could get burned in a fire. It can get stolen. If I have a $100 bill in my pocket and I spend it, the only thing that changes for me is I don't have it in my pocket anymore. I barely knew it was there in the first place. And I have this shiny penny item now for $100, and I don't have my 100. And if we get into the practical aspects, if I want to create a budget, I can't say, well, I think I spent $50 at Starbucks last month. I need to be able to go to a statement that says, no, Rick, it was $247. So either write down 247 or change your habits, right? But if I just spent cash in different places, you know how people with ADHD are. I don't keep track. I'm certainly not going to keep the receipts. And even if I did, I'm not going to sit there for an hour adding them all up. But if I can have a credit card statement, and the caveat is keep your balance to zero or as close as you can to zero. But if I can have a credit card statement, I can print out 2 or 3 months back, and I can make a budget and say, this is realistically what I spend. And you know what? I'm upside down by $400 a month. I have to fix it. But if it's just cash, I'm going to be in denial.
It's really interesting, as I've been kind of doing a bunch of digging in my own finances, how I'm almost like, it's weird to say that it became a little bit fun, because I felt like I was putting together this puzzle, right? And then discovering how much money, because as you said, you can go back. I actually went back through just all my Amazon purchases for my business for about 18 months, right? Because I'm a lot of the things seem to be so one-off kinds of things, but then you're like, oh wait, I replaced this wire about a year ago. Oh, I got this thing, and then you start to see, oh, there's pretty reliable averages. Right. And then when you start to look at that, it's like, oh, okay, so I can actually get my cumulative average and then look each month to say whether I'm at average, above or below. And I found that to be really helpful. I looked at, Rick, so I didn't realize, this is embarrassing to say, but I didn't realize for 10 years how much we had been paying our accountant. Mm-hmm. And when I was looking through all the expenses and realized how much we pay our accountant, I was dumbstruck, right? Yeah. And I was like, I need to find a new accountant. This is absurd, right? So just things like that. And then you're like, wait, I can be saving a ton of money because I'm now paying attention to these things that on all these, we talk about the ADHD tax, how many online services and memberships are we paying for that we haven't used in months?
Yes, absolutely.
So are there any like automated tools that you recommend for helping keep track of stuff?
I think they're good. I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way. I belong to a business group, several of them actually, but I belong to this one group where we fill in kind of a spreadsheet and it says how we spend our time because it's about balance in life. Are you doing 80 hours worth of work and you're totally ignoring your family? Where are you? So we fill this in. One of the lines is how much time do you spend managing your money? And I'm in the money management business in a way. I teach people about it, right? Well, most of the people in that group, they put between 10 and 15% of their time. And I just think, well, I don't want to spend 10 or 15% of my time doing that. I put in about a 1% in there because everything I do is automated. And I do it because, and this is the roundabout part, everybody's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. Money is on the second level, right? And if you don't get the money under control, if you don't get financial stability, you can't work on the higher levels like being emotionally available to your kids and enjoying your life and, doing all these different things to people. You can't go out and do something good in the world if you're constantly worried someone's going to knock on your door and evict you. So, that's, for me, I want to automate all that stuff. I don't really want to think about it. I'm not going to try to get every last dime out of, interest rate returns on my investments and things. I'm just not going to micromanage it. I'd rather go to do the work that I'm passionate about and kind of let the money take care of itself. And so in that respect, I'm going to give you, this is automated, but not automated. Okay. Let's just imagine, but it's a nice place to start. I have to keep looping back here. A lot of times it's this other guy I was just telling you about. He says, save 10% of your income. Another thing that I bristle about. That's nonsense, right? But for a lot of people, if they save 10% of their income, they're going to get evicted. They don't have 10% to save right now. They're already spending more. They've got to figure out how to do that. So 10% is the ideal? And 10% won't even do it. If you save 10% for 30 years, compound it a little bit, now you've got like 4 years worth of retirement income. That's not enough, right? So saving 10% isn't even going to do it. So it's impossible to start with. And in the long run, it doesn't work. So here's something that will work. It's very straightforward and simple. Let's imagine you make $5,000 a month. And let's imagine you've looked at your budget and you spend $4,000. And that's it, right? You're spending $4,000, cutting more. You're going to live a life of deprivation, which you don't want to do. You're cutting into the bone, right? So $5,000, spending $4,000. You got $1,000 in discretionary money. Take half of it and set it aside in what I will call a Financial Freedom Day fund. You can call it a retirement fund, but I don't intend to retire, so it doesn't work for me. Financial Freedom Day is when that fund will actually pay all my living expenses. So I take $500, put it in there, and the other $500, I'm going to use it to live my life, enjoy myself. I'm going to go to Starbucks if that's what I want to do, whatever it happens to be. And then and that is 10%, right? But just coincidentally, but when I get a raise, I'm going to take 50% of that raise and I'm going to set it aside. And I'm going to do that for year after year after year. And probably in less than 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be saving 20 or 30 or 40% of my income. And that's what it takes. And not only will that get you where you want to go retirement wise, but also if your income retracts, let's suppose now you're making 10,000 and you've kept your expenses down to 5. If you're out of work for a month, you're going to get behind by 5,000. You can make it up really quickly. But if you're making 10 and spending 9 and you're out of work for 1 month, you're going to be behind by 9,000. It's going to take you 9 months to make it up. So it's a risk factor. And a lot of money management is managing risk. It's not about getting more return on your money. It's managing the risks. You fall off the ladder a lot faster than you climb it.
You hear talk about like kind of being behind. I think something that is a unfortunate common experience for too many people with ADHD is getting behind on their taxes. So I want to take a quick break. When we get back, maybe we can just address the question of what to do if you might be a couple of years behind on filing your taxes. We will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from ADHD Rewired's coaching community, which includes our coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community. Whether you're brand new to the podcast and interested in coaching, or you've been thinking about joining these coaching groups season after season, Take the first step by going to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list by clicking the black button. Our registration kickoff event is this Thursday, and our registration for our kickoff event is full. We do have another event, though, on September 10th. So head on over to the website at coachingrewired.com to see how many spots we still have available. Remember, registration is by invitation only. Once you get on our interest list, you will get an email from us with 3 steps to register for our second event on September 10th. You'll have to first watch a 30-minute presentation, which you can watch on your time. Secondly, record a 45-second intro video about yourself, and then look out for an email with the registration event information. Remember, our final registration event will be on Thursday, September 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern. As our fall groups fill up, we will update the website at coachingrewired.com. Don't miss your chance to join us. The website again is coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired is brought to you by our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I would like to welcome Phoebe M., who joined us at the $25 a month level. Phoebe became a patron on August 26th. Thank you. Phoebe, I hope to see you at our next Patreon coaching call on September 22nd at 4 p.m. Eastern. Consider giving at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. If you are able to support this podcast, I sincerely thank you. Any amount really does help. And for those of you who are giving at the $25 a month level, your next coaching call is on Tuesday, September 22nd at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Our group coaching calls are every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. But you can also join us at $5 or $10 a month, whatever amount makes sense to you. And if right now no amount makes sense to you, but you want to support this podcast, you can do so by leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. All of your support really is appreciated. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com or just click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page, or just go directly to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. All right, we are back with Rick Webster from Rena-Fi. Am I saying that right? Rena-Fi? Am I saying that right?
Rena-Fi, like Renaissance Financial.
All right. Excellent. All right. So what do you recommend to people who, if it's just been a couple of years since they filed taxes?
Well, the pejorative answer is file them. but I know that's difficult and it's scary. And you somehow feel like if you're not on their radar, why would you want to pop up and say, here I am, I'm behind, come get me? You don't want to do that. You don't want to, but it might actually be what you should do. I think the number one thing is to take your head out of the sand and realize this problem is not going to go away. Every month that you wait, it just gets worse. You can end up paying 3 times as much as you owed, by the time they add all their penalties and stuff. I mean, you'd be better off borrowing from the mafia, right? It's expensive. So I would say, depending on the level, you may want to hire a professional to represent you, or if it's a small amount and, it's just, 2 years worth of filing and you're not going to owe very much, then just file them. They don't have time. You can censor this out so they don't see it. They don't have time to monitor everything. They just don't. So unless you're going to trip something major, just file your taxes. Just file them. You get a non-filing penalty, right? Just file the taxes.
So you're saying the penalty might not actually be as bad as you think?
And even if it is as bad as you think, it's going to get worse, right? If you're going in the wrong direction, it doesn't do any good to just keep going.
But I guess I'm wondering for someone who's listening to this, like they hear that and they're like, I'm just going to keep burying my head in the sand because that just makes me feel too anxious.
Yes, but you'll feel a heck of a lot less anxious when you file those things. And dealing with them, and here's a ancillary thing, but dealing with state taxes is worse than the IRS. The IRS, their philosophy is they want you back in the fold, earning money, paying taxes. They want to help you work, regardless of what the stereotypes are. They're very good about that. So they want to help you. Now, if you're talking about state governments, I happen to be in California, they just want their money no matter what. They don't care what happens to you. They just want their money. So it's worse. But I'd still file it because it's not going to get any better. But if you file the taxes, there's a system that you go through. And essentially you're going to end up with a number, which you already owed anyway, and they'll continue to put interest on it. There won't be as many penalties and things added to it. And if you really can't pay it, they have, not offers in compromise, I forgot what it's called now, but they have programs, an installment program that you can get on. And even if you owed $5,000, you might be able to start as little as $50 a month if that's all you could do. So now you're back in it. And believe me, there's less anxiety knowing that you have to pay them $50 than wondering if your bank account's going to be empty next week, which is what they will do if you ignore them. That you don't leave them any choice. It's not their fault. They're charged with collecting what is essentially the government's money, whether you like that idea or not. I don't like it, but the fact that that's what it is. They're charged with collecting it. They will send you a series of nasty letters. They will do a bunch of different things. Eventually, they will just empty your bank account. And they will do it on the 14th of the month, right? They will do it, the 16th. They will do it the day after you get paid. So, just realize that you're forcing them to take these steps. And if you step up and say, here I am, I owe money, I don't know what to do about it, it will be much better for you.
Yeah, I have, and people that I've worked with, I have heard that people who are in that scenario and take the initiative, reach out to the IRS, and they've always said it was less painful than they thought it was going to be.
Far less. And think about it as an individual. Imagine that you loaned me $1,000. Okay. If I ignore you and I don't take your calls and I don't respond to your letters and you have the power to empty my bank account, you don't really want to do that, but you will at some point because I'm leaving you no choice. And I think the taxpayer, and that's part of ADHD remediation, is to quit thinking it's the outside world. Is we're the ones that put ourselves in these positions and we're the only ones that can get us out. Now, on the one hand, if it's the world doing it, it's not my fault. But the fact is, if the world's doing it, I have no choice, right? But if I'm doing it, I have a choice to get better. So I really think if I owed you money, the stupid thing would be to ignore you. I'd say, hey, Eric, I don't have it. I'm sorry. I just don't have it. What else can we do? Can I give you $25 a month? Can I, I've got a bicycle in the garage. Can I trade you that? What can I do? So
here's a sort of interesting, it's kind of a specific question, but I'm wondering if we could also maybe generalize to it. So it's about when it's time to replace a car. So in this particular situation, this person has a car it's a 2007 Honda Civic with relatively low mileage, 100 kilometers. Now they just had a $1,250 exhaust repair bill, but mostly has been reliable and generally only requiring routine maintenance. I see there's some rust on the interior door jamb, but I don't really know how long to hold on to this. Like, how do you help people figure those kinds of decisions out?
The first thing I would do is I'd go to my budget, which you may not have, but that's a clue, right? So we got to get the budget done. What kind of money do we have available? We have another little session that talks about, can I afford it, quote unquote. Being able to afford something doesn't mean you have a room on your credit card. It doesn't even mean you have cash in the bank. It means, is this going to improve or make a mess out of my future, right? Can I afford it? And is it going to cause some problems for me? So, I always joke about the Range Rover payment before you own a house. Yeah. But the Range Rover is a perfectly good car if you can afford it, if it's not going to compromise your future. Right. So I would go to the budget and say, what can we actually afford? What will not compromise our future? And then I would also think about the car. The car is not just for fun and it's not just an emotional thing, but it's also very practical. We need it to get to work. We got to go buy groceries, got to pick up the kids. So you want a reliable car. And in my life, I actually discovered and I have a lot of cars in my life, but what I discovered is older used cars, they cost more than newer cars. They just do. When my kids started buying cars, I was helping them out. We went and looked for 3-year-old lease returns because they've taken that 3-year hit on the depreciation, dramatic. You don't have to do that if you buy it 3 years old. And lease returns have been really well maintained because the person who owned it wanted their deposits back and they kept the miles down. So they're a really good deal as far as a used car. If you've got a car that's breaking down, and now you can't get to work, or maybe you can't, get your babysitter home in the evening, or it's just not reliable and you're afraid something will happen. I would say if it's beginning to weigh on you, then I would be I've moved towards replacing it. You could, if you really want to get into the weeds, analyze how much that car is costing you every month. You know, the $1,200 exhaust heavy, is that a once a year thing? If it is, it's costing you $100, right? So I would look at those kind of things. Yeah, I can't give a specific answer because it's different for everybody.
Right.
I will say my financial meltdown 20 years ago weaned me off of any need to have newer cars or whatever. You know, I like cars. I've had a lot of them, but these cars, I think what I realized is all this material stuff, it's not my life. That's not who I am. And they don't really make me happy. Buying something new and shiny, it's like a shot in the arm, quite literally. It's like a narcotic in a way. It makes you feel good for a little while. But if it's compromising your future, it's not a healthy thing. So roundabout answer. But yeah, if the car's starting to cost a lot and it's causing hassles and you can't get, you don't know if you're going to be able to pick your kids up on time because you don't know how reliable it is, then it's probably time. I like to make my life, I don't have to worry about things.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do this. Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about how to help people set up for retirement, especially if they're maybe a little bit behind on this. So we will be right back. If you are new to this podcast, you might not know that we have 2 other podcasts on the ADHD reWired podcast network. Check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Kerb every Monday. This week, Will talks about how to find a therapist. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. Have you been looking for a therapist? Check out Will's current episode that drops every Monday. Subscribe to these short, mindful ways to hack your ADHD. It might be the best 15 minutes you spent all week. Go to hackingYourADHD.com for show notes and to subscribe. And every Friday, check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Brendan's podcast is kind of like this one in format, but the focus is on families, parents, and educators. Both podcasts, Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials, are both part of the ADHD reWired podcast network, available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. And you can join me and the host of Hacking Your ADHD, Will Kerb, and the host of ADHD Essentials, Brendan Mahan, for an hour of live Q&A. Our next one is September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. That's next week. Go to ADHDrewired.com to register for this and upcoming live Q&As. Join us every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. Join us for our next live Q&A on September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there. All right, we are back with Rick Webster from Rena-Fi. And so let's talk about retirement. This is this fund that we're putting away, hopefully each month, that is going to hopefully take care of us for our, as we're getting senile in our old age. Right. So a lot of people, I hear people say, well, I don't have any money to put towards retirement. I'll deal with this later. Now they're 40, 50 years old and they still haven't done anything towards retirement. Like how do you help people with that?
It's a big issue. It's a huge issue. First of all, I love poking holes in myths. That's a big part of what we do because that's my DNA, I think. But it's kind of a myth that people, when they're 25 years old or when they're 20 years old, should take big amounts of money and set it aside, right? And compromise their life and live a life of deprivation. At that age, you should be going out to parties and having fun with your friends and going out to dinner and all that. You should be buying clothes that make you feel good and you're out in the dating world and all that. You should be doing that. This idea that compounding interest is going to save you it's not magic like they say. It's just a mathematical formula, and it will not get you where you want to go. I'm going to take a tangent here, Eric. And a relative of mine passed away recently, and my sister and I were emptying, some box that the sheriff's department had. I don't know where it came from, safe deposit or something. There was a quarter and a dime in there, and they were actually made out of silver, so they might have been worth something. But I remembered that when I was little, I could go to the movies for 35 cents. the movie. I could watch a show. And now I can't do that for any less than like $12 or $14. So I just, my own little mathematical mind is, I'm going to put that in my calculator. That 35 cents, not counting taxes or anything, compounding it, I think I put 6% in, might have been 5, was $4.26. If I had saved it and thought that compounding interest would get me where I was going to go, it was a movie ticket. And now it's only a third of a movie ticket.
Interesting.
So the compounding interest, while it's good, is not going to get you where you want to go. If you're relying on that for retirement, you're making a mistake.
That's so different from what I've understood about investing. So say more, please.
Yeah. Compound. It's important, but it's just, there's no magic to it. And it doesn't do what people think it'll do.
I mean, there's that Einstein quote that says compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And it is important. Don't get me wrong. So my personal philosophy, and I, pass this on to my 4 kids, don't try to save all your extra money when you're 25 years old. But by the time you're in your mid 30s and you've established, maybe you've got a house, maybe you've got a family starting, you've got these different things going on. That's when you need to start thinking, you know what, the next time I get a raise, we'll go back to that example. I'm going to take half of that raise and start putting it aside. Because if you start when you're 35 and you save half of every raise you get, and that goes into an account which compounds, you will do quite well financially. But what happens is every time people get a raise, they raise their expenses equally, if not more. So they used to make $4,000 a month and they were spending $3,500. Now they're making $10,000 a month and they're spending $9,000. They're not getting anywhere. But if they had taken half of that money beyond the whatever $3,500 to $10,000, if they took half of it, they'd be putting $3,000 or $4,000 a month aside in their retirement account. Right? And if something went wrong, they wouldn't have a lot of expenses to make up.
I recently heard something about how if you have a mortgage, that if instead of paying your mortgage monthly, if you actually pay it twice a month, that over the length of your mortgage, you can save a profound amount of money. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's another mathematical formula. Sure. Okay, you want to save a profound amount of money. Let's talk about something that actually works. All you're really doing is you're paying the mortgage off sooner, right? So you could write the people a check for $10,000 and you would save a profound amount of money also, right? Because you're saving all the but all the interest for that next 28 years or whatever it's going to be. If you look at an amortization table, and they're hard to find now because we all use calculators, but if you were to look at an amortization table on, I think, a $100,000 loan at 8%, and, I'm old school, I remember 8% was a good interest rate. But if you look at that, the last month, most of your payment will go to principal and like $23 goes to interest. Okay. If you take that $23 for the last month for 28 years from now, and instead you write an extra $23 on your mortgage payment right now, you will eliminate that last month's payment of $1,000 or whatever it happens to be. So it's just a matter of interest, and our minds think adding and subtracting, but the world works in multiplying and dividing, right? It's called exponential. So the world is a multiplier effect or a dividing effect. So yes, if I was to pay an extra $23 on my mortgage this month, just one time, forget it, I'll have one entire month less mortgage payment to make at the end. But there's no magic to it. I could put that $23 in an investment at 8% instead of my mortgage at 8%, and it'll be the same thing. I'm not counting taxes and complications like that right now.
But so I guess what I was reading on this was that so you're basically dividing whatever your monthly mortgage payment is, but instead of paying that full amount at the end of the month, you're paying half of that mid-month and then the other half at the end of the month. So is that my brain still is having a hard time understanding how that helps?
Anything?
I need Sesame Street simple, Rick, on this stuff.
Okay. So I'll take a different tack. So anytime you pay a mortgage off sooner, right, you will save yourself all the interest on that money for the entire rest of the loan. And it is substantial.
And I get that part, but how is just dividing your payment in half for each month, you're making 2 payments, where at the end of the month you made the same amount instead of making the 1 payment? Is it just because of that 2-week period you're paying less?
You're paying, and I've heard it differently. I've heard that, pay every 2 weeks. And that works in the sense that there's 4.3 weeks in a month. So if you're paying every 2 weeks, you're actually paying, maybe 8 or 9% more. So in that respect. So, but if anytime you pay money early, you save that. So I don't know what the effect would be. I would think it'd be pretty minor. But if you paid your mortgage 2 weeks early, and you have that, I think all house loans are that way. If you paid it 2 weeks early, you would not pay interest from that moment for the next 2 weeks. So you're actually saving that 2 weeks worth of interest on one payment. I don't think that would add up to a heck of a lot, but it would add up to something.
What are some other ways that you think that maybe we overlook as ways to either better manage the money or our debts, how to managing our debts?
So we need to keep an eye on it. Okay. We talked about how when things are going well, people check in, and when they're not going well, they check out. So we need to have the self-discipline to say, I'm not happy. I've seen the stock market drop a lot lately because of COVID-19 and, whatever is happening in the world. This is not a time to not pay attention. It's also not a time to panic and, bail because, there's a certain cyclical nature to the world. And the worst thing you could probably do, I'm not a financial advisor, but the worst thing you could do when something drops 35% is to bail on it, because does seem to be what a lot of people do. But that doesn't mean we ignore it when it's not going our way. And that's especially true of, credit card debt and taxes that haven't been paid and any other obligations that are just kind of building in the background. The worst thing we can do is to pretend like they're not there, because they just get worse. It's like not a doctor either. It's like a cancer. The worst thing you can probably do is ignore it, right? I heard and I think this is a little facetious, but I think it's true. Someone said they asked the Mayo Clinic what the most common cause of death is, and there was all kinds of answers about heart disease and cancer and all that. And they said, no, it's denial. The most common cause of death is denial. Now, whether that's just a meme or that's true, I don't know. But I think
I'm actually listening right now. I just actually finished the book right now, Being Mortal. And there's a huge, there's research that's showing that not having end of life discussions, is a huge, complicating factor in death. And they actually showed that there's a 75% improvement on people's outcomes just by having discussions about end of life care.
Oh, yeah. We don't gain. I get that sometimes we're protecting ourselves from something that's so awful, right? I can see that part of denial. All these things, they have a benefit from evolution. That's why we have them. But if we apply them in the wrong ways, like pretending the IRS isn't going to get upset with us, it doesn't work out in our favor.
What about, here's a question that we have in here about balancing, or where do you balance savings versus investments versus paying off debt? How do you kind of figure out where are you putting your money?
Very good. So let's imagine you have an investment that you think is going to give you 14%. And believe me, if you think you're getting 14%, there's a risk factor attached to that these days, because it's a way above market. But you could do it. Let's imagine you have that opportunity and you've got $10,000. Okay, put it into that. And you've got a credit card with $10,000 worth of debt on it. So do I pay the credit card off, or do I go for the 14%? And let's say maybe that 14 is actually 15. I think I might gain a little bit. You got to look at risk factors, not just return. When I pay my credit card, I know I'm saving that money because I'm the one that pays it, right? Even if I don't want to pay it, it's going to get paid out of my estate one way or another. So I know I'm going to get a 14% return on that money, right? If I put it into this 14% real estate investment, which I think looks really good, I don't know. It may work. It might not. If I did it 100 times, maybe the average wouldn't be 14. It might be 9% because sometimes it doesn't work. So first of all, realize that you're your own best payer. And if you owe money, chances are really good paying your own debts off is better than investing somewhere else. Especially something like a credit card, which is what's called a revolving debt. In bad times like now, they can cancel your credit line, and they do, 50,000 credit lines at a time. They just throw up a pen. So that could happen. But if you pay your credit card off, the chances are, if your car breaks down, now you can go use the credit card and you're stable because you can fix your car as opposed to if you couldn't. And, the majority of Americans would have trouble coming up with $1,000. So in that respect, pay your debts off, pay the revolving debts first, pay the installment loans second. If you pay your car loan, you give them an extra $5,000, you still have to make the regular payment next month. So it doesn't really stabilize you. You'll pay less interest, but we're really talking about stability is more important than what you're paying in interest. They're both important, but stability is crucial. Just keep thinking If you fall off the ladder, it's going to be painful. You're going to get damaged. Your credit report is going to be damaged, all kinds of things. So you don't want to fall off the ladder. Climbing the ladder is important, but not falling is more important. So yes, pay the revolving, pay the installment loans second, and definitely you want to fund your retirement accounts.
All right, let's bring it back to real basics again for a moment here,
okay,
as we're finishing this up. So, you said that like at the very beginning that, a lot of this, so much of this is just adding and subtracting, and most people are fine with adding and subtracting. What if you're not? What if you actually struggle with doing mathematical computation? What if you struggle with, like for myself, I have dyscalculia, so I swap numbers when if I'm looking at something and then I have to write it down, I will repeatedly inverse numbers when I'm writing it down. So I actually have actual brain-based challenges with numbers. How does someone like me who gets overwhelmed for good reason, right, kind of do this and really also monitor for mistakes?
Yeah. So if I got a really bad cut on my arm, I mean, it's a little one, I just put a Band-Aid on it. I'm good, right?
Okay.
If I had a bad cut, I'm going to go seek out someone who knows what to do about that. I'm going to go get some medical attention, make sure that the wound is clean, it's got some antibiotics, get it, bandaged up. So I think the same things with our money. If we struggle with certain aspects of managing our money and it's not going to get better, it's not just a matter of paying a little more attention, then go get a bookkeeper. Right? There are people out there that would love to have the job to do that. And bookkeepers are amazingly cheap, I think. They don't cost much at all. And that person can do all of that. It's
just an idea what that would cost for a person just to help manage their finances.
Bookkeepers typically make, a little better than minimum wage, but we're talking $15, $20 for an hour. And maybe you only need them for an hour a week. You just, and they're fractionalized. You don't hire them for 40 hours. You hire them for 1 hour. So yeah, I'm totally on board with going out and finding the people who can do what we need rather than struggling and doing a mediocre job of it ourselves. You would probably, not you personally, but most people would probably save as much in late fees and hassles and anxiety as they would have to pay a bookkeeper at $20 a week.
I mean, it's so funny when you say that because I'm just thinking I'm looking at switching my accountants and I'm looking at finding a new financial planner, and the idea of just hiring a bookkeeper to help with part of this, I honestly have never thought of. Yeah. It's just one of these solutions that seems so simple, and yet what other kind of financial professionals could also be helpful in any part of this that maybe we're not even thinking about?
Yeah, I work with entrepreneurs a lot, so I think in that kind of direction. And bookkeeping is first. It's a low bar. It doesn't cost very much. An accountant is the next step up, really. And then you want people who can be a strategic accountant, who can actually direct you. One of the mistakes, and I certainly make it myself, we tend to think we know everything, right? And there's something called Dunning-Kruger. You should look it up if you don't know what it is, because it's a fascinating concept. And that is when someone knows a little bit about something, they immediately get really overconfident and think they know everything. And then as they get to be an expert, that curve comes down. And then as they really get to be good, it comes back up, but it never gets to the confidence level as it did when they were first knew almost nothing.
Yeah.
And where that comes into play, and we're talking about hiring people who can help us, is when and this is another study, I wish I could pull up the name of it, but when people need an answer for something, less successful people will go to their aunt or their uncle and ask about a money question. And the aunt, the uncle's a plumber. He's a great guy, but he doesn't know anything about finances. Successful people, even if they have to pay for it, they will go out and get the answer from the person who knows the answer, right? And obviously we have to moderate that. We can't just throw, thousands of dollars aside and away. But if we want to be successful, we go find the person who knows the answer so we don't go down the wrong path. So I guess that's my thought. And there's all kinds of professionals and whatever it is. I know for me with ADHD, I found a coach first of all, and I threw in a physical trainer too, because I was so out of shape and I wasn't going to do it myself. And I said, I got to go once a week and then I'll be accountable to that guy. And that got me going. I didn't really want to spend the $50 a week to do it. I barely had it, but I knew I needed to solve that problem. And so, I just forced that issue. So I'm all in favor of rationally going out and finding experts that can help us out.
So part of what I'm hearing you saying is like, yes, maybe you're tight on money. You don't know if you could afford it, but then you also are thinking about what is it costing you to not get the help?
That's, exactly. I've dealt with a lot of, run a bunch of support groups for Chad and such. And I remember mentioning, and I don't usually talk about dollars because, it's emotionally laden, but I remember mentioning I had a coach and, I didn't pay her much in the beginning and I kind of charmed her into working for me. And I'm really grateful for the service she gave me. But at some point it was like $400 a month. And the person said, how can you afford that? And it was difficult for me to afford it. But my response was, I don't remember if I verbalized it or not, but my response was, how can I not afford it?
Yeah.
This person is changing my life. And maybe I won't pay her $400, but I'm not going to get where I want to go. And I'm probably going to lose it in late fees and everything else. I need my life straightened out. So I would do the same thing with finances. If they're a mess, like if the taxes are 3 years behind and you don't feel like you can just file them yourself, and you probably can with TurboTax, it's not that hard these days. Then find somebody. There's a whole different scale of, expensive out there. You can find someone who'll do your taxes for a fairly reasonable amount of money and just get them done.
Are you a believer in the importance of working with a fiduciary if they're an accountant? Like, I've heard a lot of things about like the importance of working with a fiduciary.
Yeah, it's deeper than we can go here. My thought is money is not like everything in the universe, right? If I'm going to lose a little bit of money somewhere, it's okay. My ex-wife used to accuse me, said, you're just too nice, because I wouldn't go collect money that someone couldn't pay me or whatever, tenants and stuff like that. I said, well, it's just not the way it's not that I'm it's not that I'm afraid of confrontation. I just don't want to live my life that way. Right. And so I guess the answer here is, I want to live my life in a way that makes me feel good about it. And if I lose money once in a while, I'm just going to accept that as part of the deal. And so whether someone's a fiduciary or not, I really believe things should be in writing with money, but I really believe it's the handshake and the person behind it, the integrity that they have. Some people have no credentials whatsoever, and they're just the best people in the world to work with. Other people, will just scam you all over the place, and they may have a lot of letters after their name. So I think the fiduciary thing is maybe the government's attempt to regulate something so that people don't get taken advantage of. But I look at the person I'm working with. What it really comes down to.
Rick, where can people learn more about the services that you provide? And I know you have a great website that has all kinds of resources. Let's talk for a moment about that as we wrap this up.
Sure. This is the elevator pitch that I'm so far. My team keeps telling me, Rick, you've got to figure this out. But no, we're at Rena-Fi.com. It's like Renaissance Financial or Renovate, I guess, but it's RENA-FI. And we bought a bunch of the URLs. So if you spell it wrong, you'll find us anyway.
So smart.
But we're basically a subscription service, and our philosophy at this point, there'll be a point when we have to have things that we can't do for the subscription fee that might be add-ons. But right now, everything we have is $20 a month. It's just a flat $20. And we have a variety of different classes. It's not a real broad spectrum. We chose to try and do the classes that we do and do them very well, as opposed to just throwing a lot of stuff up against the wall. And then we have some groups in there that are small group coaching sessions that someone can come in. And I like to work with entrepreneurs. So we can come in and for like 45 minutes, we just have a general discussion. People can bring up their questions and, give answers to that. That's included in that. And, just try it out. I'm not very good at explaining what we do, but it is guaranteed. And my benchmark, and I just keep at my whole team for this, is to hit 10x. If what we're doing doesn't have a perceived and real value of 10 times to the people who are signing up with us, then we're not doing our job right. And I know some of that's subjective, but that's our target. We need to have people feel that they're getting 10 times the value. It's not a tough thing to do at $20. I mean, if we can't provide $200 worth of value to someone, especially in the ADHD world where 61% of us have serious financial problems.
Rick Webster from Rena-Fi, thank you so much. You can learn more about him at Rena-Fi.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.